Capital One closed down hundreds of Trump Organization bank accounts due to money laundering. That's probably what you've heard, and we're going to explain what it means starting from the very beginning. Okay, so it all starts in 2021, actually. And if you remember, in 2021, Trump lost the 2020 presidential election. He's leaving office, and around that same time, January 6th happens, and Capital One closes nearly 300 bank accounts attached to the Trump Organization. That's 2021. Fast forward to 2025. Trump, now back in office for his second term, sues Capital One, saying, hey, when you closed my bank accounts in 2021, that was actually politically motivated, and you were wrong for that. Specifically, Trump says this is done as a result of banks like Capital One and JP Morgan wanting to debank prominent conservative figures, meaning I don't want to work with you just because you're a conservative. That is the claim the Trump Organization and Trump's team is making in court, saying that those bank accounts were wrongfully closed because Trump is a conservative. Now, this wasn't too much of a story back in 2021. If you remember, there were a lot of other things going on. But then 2025 comes and Trump is back in office, and that's when he decides to start these legal proceedings against Capital One. When he's back in office, even though he had 4 years to do so when he was just former President Trump or candidate Trump. Now that he's acting President Trump, he decides to sue Capital One. Again, Capital One doesn't air this all out at first, but in trying to get this lawsuit thrown out in court, we have what's called discovery, which is when you bring evidence to the judge and basically say, here's why this should proceed on, or here's why we need to throw this out. And it was in that discovery that Capital One's lawyers basically tell the courts, hey, we didn't say this at the time, but it was actually our anti-money laundering team that closed down the bank accounts because the activity in those bank accounts looked like money laundering. This is very important. We are not yet in the process of the legal proceedings where Capital One has had to definitively prove that Trump and the Trump Organization were money laundering. They're just at the phase where they said our team suspected money laundering, therefore we severed that relationship. But it has not been proven that Trump and the Trump Organization were money laundering. It just looked to the people at Capital One like it was money laundering. Matter of fact, normally it wouldn't be up to a bank to prove that a person or an organization was money laundering, because that's something that would typically be proven by the Department of Justice or the state level officials where the alleged money laundering was taking place. So what happens now? Basically, the judge in the case has to decide, do I want to side with Capital One and throw this case out altogether? No more discovery, it's done, it's over. Or do I want to side with the people in the Trump Organization and say, yeah, this case can keep going?